nos acompanha aí. Essa é, excuse me, Cindy, just to organize the ideas in Portuguese first. Como vocês viram, a gente está transmitindo algumas... a conversa com a nossa professora Cindy, que veio de Cardiff para nos visitar, e a possibilidade que nós encontramos de diálogo com vocês foi essa transmissão. Então, não há uma apresentação específica. Queria convidar quem está... Eu estou acompanhando o chat, então, se vocês quiserem fazer alguma pergunta por ali, para conversar com a gente, fiquem à vontade. Mas a apresentação mesmo da professora será feita amanhã. Então, quem tiver interesse, eu vou escrever aqui, manda um e-mail para o laplane@unicamp.br, e aí vocês vão ter acesso ao link da aula de amanhã. Então, a princípio, eu vou pedir para a professora Cindy só se apresentar e trazer para vocês as grandes temáticas, né, do que ela pesquisa. Professor, I was telling those 5 people that are accompanying us from YouTube that right now, if they have any kind of questions and would like to share anything with you about the research, it could be, we are open to that. I can read their questions here in the chat. And that you're going to be with us tomorrow morning. So I indicated also the link for them to accompany that. And if you could, just for establishing to initiate the dialogue here, if you could like present yourself and say the main aspects of your research, of course, not very specific because we know you're going to do that after. Please be my guest. Thank you.
Would I be able to see them, or?
No, not now.
I think it's working, yeah. Can you hear me? No. Yes, everybody can hear me? I don't see faces, so that I can just assume that you're there, yeah. Yes, I'm Xin Yi Chung. I'm a professor of sociology at Cardiff University in the School of Social Sciences. I'm very honored to be invited, and I'm very, very pleased to be here. And lots of organization has gone in to organize this visit, and so very pleased. I have always been wanting to come to Campinas and university. I heard a lot of good things about Unicamp, and so I finally made it. So I am trained as a quantitative sociologist at the University of Oxford many years ago. And I didn't realize that years later, I would actually enter migration research. My first job was in Hong Kong. I was born in Hong Kong, a British colony, and some of us relate to that. We talked about the Queen earlier, associated with that sentiment of being an immigrant in the UK myself, although I would describe myself more like a professional foreigner, even though I'm a British citizen. So my doctoral thesis was actually on sociology of education, what I called a disaggregated approach, using Bourdieu's theory on cultural capital to look at an idea of meritocracy. And so I study what I call horizontal stratification. So it's not just about the level of education you obtain, but also what kind of education you obtain, from law, accountancy, finance and business administration, to medicine, to arts and humanities and social sciences. So these different disciplines, even though you have the same level of university degree, and also depends which university you went to. So if you go to University of Bath or Cardiff or Oxbridge, it's different from University of Wolverhampton. And so the prestige of institution matters, or whether you study part-time or full-time program also matter. So that's what I call horizontal stratification. So I started my research career writing about inequalities in education and the link between education and the labor market. So the labor market return is not equal to all these different disciplines and training. And so I've published a number of things along in that area, and then I realized that actually there is a lot more to it. It's not just about social class, background, and gender, but also ethnicity. In the UK, like Brazil, we have a lot of immigration because of our colonial past. Our immigration is mainly from the southern Indian continent, Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, but also the entire Africa, West Indies, and so the Caribbeans and the Africans. And if you study social inequalities and not look at ethnicity, you're missing a big picture. So I started being interested in what I call ethnic stratification, and that led to the first cross-national study of ethnic penalties in the labor market. So I co-edited this, or co-led this project with 13 countries with Anthony Heath, who's actually happened to be my PhD supervisor. And so I'm very interested in writing about what explain the labor market disadvantage of UK-born, so ethnic minority. So immigrants, there was lots of reasons why immigrants do worse in a new country, because they don't speak the language, their foreign qualification is not recognized, or they don't understand the institution, they don't have the social network to get good jobs or even access quality of healthcare and quality education for the children. However, if you're born in the UK, you're effectively UK citizen. You go through the UK education system from birth. There's no reason that the labor market outcome would be any different, because they grew up speaking English. And so if there is any difference, so any social inequality or labor market inequality that experienced by UK-born second or higher generation of ethnic minorities, is a big part of that would be discrimination. And so we try to do that comparative research using standardized analyses over 13 countries. So we have South Africa, we have Northern Ireland, we have the US, Germany, Belgium, Austria, Israel, Australia, and so on. And the UK come up kind of in the middle. We're not the worst, unlike Germany and Austria, and we're not the best. So after that, so the book was published in 2007 called Unequal Chances, a very big, heavy book. So since then, I started doing a lot more what I call foreigners research, and also immigrant and refugees integration research, and mostly using quantitative methods. And recently I started doing more qualitative research as well. So I would describe myself as a methodologically a pluralist in terms of methodology. I don't, unlike some of my ethnography, you will see when you come to Cardiff, and unlike some of my ethnographers colleagues, they think quantitative research is lowest of the low, and you're training technocrats. But I think it's different things to different methodology answer different research questions, and there are research questions that cannot be answered by ethnographic methods. Certainly, if you do social and public policy research, you need some what's it called evidence, and I mean. Scientific research includes qualitative evidence too, but it's just a little bit more difficult to explain to a civil servant or minister how many percentage of kids living in poverty, or how many, and the percentage of X. So using rigorous scientific methodology, we combine these different expertise to get to what we call the bottom of the truth. So that's what I do in a nutshell. So I increasingly write more about gender and migration, refugee integration, and unfortunately, the way the world is going on, we continue to have a lot of materials to write about. If it wasn't the old migration from the Commonwealth, like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, We have the southern continent, we talked about earlier, Indians, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi. But now, new form of migration is much more diverse, what we call super diversity. So in London, you're walking down London, it will be like 200 languages spoken, like New York, it's a bit like Sao Paulo as well. So very, very huge diversity. And to understand that new super diversity, we need new analytical tools, and we need to just looking at people's ethnicity is not enough. You need to look at the linguistic profile and look at the religious profile. And in the UK, certainly, people are talking about religion is a new form of ethnicity, new form of racialized. How, for example, how Muslims are racialized and discriminated because they are Muslim. So I think it's fascinating. I find it very interesting, and I'm looking to make connection with colleagues here who study inequalities education and the link between education and economy. So tomorrow, my talk tomorrow will be more about. I published a book recently called The Death of Human Capital, and I'll focus looking at what universities really should be about. So I hope that will be of interest tomorrow. But today, my talk this afternoon will focus much more on migration. Thank you very much. I hope that's summarized a little bit of what I do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you don't mind, there are 3 students here asking first if you would like to put Brazil in your map of discussion with migrants, together with the other countries that you mentioned. If you're thinking about having Brazil together with this discussion with migration and inequalities. The other student is, just a second, because they keep writing it in Portuguese and I have to translate that in English. And another as if in the countries that you study, there are people also from those countries accompany, like as students, accompany those studies. And if you think that's made some kind of difference to have someone inside, like from Bangladesh, like from the country specific that you are studying. The other things about the, if there are issues, like when you said about the discrimination part, because let me see if I understood it right and if the question applies. You said that now the second generation that is born in there from the migrants is facing discrimination, right? Okay. So is there a problem with the double language concern that they have, like the language they speak at home and the language that they speak in their daily life? Yeah, that's it. And the other person said, may I do another question? Yes, let's Professor Singhi just do this one and another one, because you're having the opportunity to dialogue with her tomorrow too.
Very good question. I didn't get the second question about the Bangladesh, about country. Can you repeat the second question?
Okay,
please?
like the second, I am researching like Brazil. Do you have anyone from Brazil in your staff?
No, that's the first one. The second one is about countries. I think Bangladesh was mentioned. I didn't quite get that.
No, I'm sorry. It's maybe I did a mistake in trying to do the first one. So sorry
so
for
that. Was
that.
an example. So
Yeah.
that's the 2 questions.
Yeah.
I can take those 2 first.
Thank you.
Yes, my quick answer to the first question is not yet, but I'm going to add Brazil to my map of the kind of immigration or migration that I'm studying. I've been a visiting professor in Tokyo University and Keio University for some years now, and I came across Nikkei Brazilians in Japan, and I learned so much about migration in Japan or return migration in Japan. So this particular group of Brazilian Japanese, again, face enormous labor market and all sorts of discrimination in the Japanese society, left, right, and center. So I thought to understand their cultural profile and what their life is like before they return to Japan, I must come and see it. That's why I'm here. So I'm very interested, and I've already been to Japan House, and I'm going to go to Liberdade. So I wanted to see what life is like for them, because they are born Brazilian. They speak Portuguese, they don't speak Japanese, and when they go back to Japan. So it's almost like this transnational movement back and forth. So that's an answer to the first questions. Yeah, I am very interested in this form of migration. To say something, I'm going to share something with you that you're going to feel good about yourself. I have a desk rejection of a paper recently. and so it happens to everyone, even full professors. So when you publish work, and also I have rejection from journals all the time. One of the papers I've written on Japanese migration that was submitted to Comparative Migration Studies, CMS, and that was about the quality of, so inter-ethnic marriages I'm interested in. So whether Japanese marrying Japanese nationals, Japanese marrying immigrants, and immigrants marrying immigrants, I wanted to understand a number of outcomes, the socioeconomic outcomes, but also the quality, what I call the quality of relationship. We have some data on that. So because it's a UK-Japan comparison, the paper was slated. And I still think it's an interesting paper, but I'm interested in a number of dimensions, not just socioeconomic outcome, but also domestic violence, which I'm going to talk about this afternoon a little bit. So it's integration, not just within the wider society, but also integration at home, as it were. I'm interested in family dynamics and how native and native marrying, do they have a better relationship quality than native marrying immigrants and immigrants marrying immigrants? So that's the idea of that paper. Very simple, but I think it's interesting. Very good question about discrimination. The second generation, they are different. You are absolutely right, because they probably speak Urdu or Arabic at home, and therefore the English language at school may not be as good as the native British white person or classmate. So that is true, but it's actually very little evidence suggesting these kids growing up in the UK, born and grow up in the UK, who've been through the British education system, do worse than their British counterpart, because we control for education. The second generation, even Bangladeshi women, there is some both quantitative and qualitative evidence suggesting that they are actually first generation. If they are bad in English, mostly women, and they don't work. And if they don't have good English language fluency, it often also means that they are illiterate in their own language. They are from some village in Pakistan or Bangladesh or India. Second generation, completely different story, because Muslim girls, they have the drudgery of doing all the domestic work, because boys never need to do any domestic work. So the only way they get out of that trap is to do well at school. And they do. So the second generation, the percentage or the proportion of them going through school and getting university degree is enormously higher than, and 4 times as the parents' generation. So controlling for the university education, i.e. these are bilingual pupils, and they still suffer badly in the labor market, and that's discrimination. And I mean, we don't, discrimination is very hard to measure using quantitative evidence, as you know, as well as I do. So there is work I've done, building on the work I've done, I can't remember his name. there have been further research done using field experiment. Field experiment to directly observe discrimination is, I don't know whether you do that in Brazil, is to send, field experiment is to send fake CV, curriculum vitae, your resume, to employers to try to apply for a job. Identical resume with a different name. So it might be Patel or Khan, so Pakistani names or Muslim names as opposed to Philip Jones or Matt Williams, but with identical qualification, but they're fake. Increasingly, some countries think they can't get through the ethics committee to do this kind of research because you're wasting people's time. But they collect direct evidence of discrimination. Everything else being equal, so there's controlled field experiments, and there's been mountains of evidence suggesting they're not even Muslim. The name suggests they might come from a Muslim country or Muslim. The majority of the population are Muslim, and they get discriminated. So there's mountains of evidence. So that but is the government doing anything about it? Not really. So we have very, very developed advanced anti-discrimination legislation in the UK, but employers always find a way to give the job to whoever they want. So it's still the ethnic penalty gap. So I don't call it discrimination because most of my work, I haven't used field experiments, so I don't call that discrimination. I call it ethnic penalties, but it's as close as you get. Because controlling for everything else, apart from the ethnicity, and that's what we call it, the ethnic penalties in the labor market and health access to health services, and our religious or ethno-religious penalty we call. So that's the state of the affairs in the UK at the moment, and I'd like to explore more about the other attributes. But increasingly, my focus is moving towards refugees and asylum seekers. So now, I mean, the Iraq and Iran war in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, generated a lot of refugee flows, and then it was the Afghan war, another wave of refugees, and now the Ukrainians. So it seems that Western governments, well, now it's dictator in Russia, generate another 20 million of refugees circulating around the world. So fortunately for us, we have lots of materials to study, but unfortunately for these poor people, life is really hard.
Thank you very much. There are two final questions. I don't know if you guys would like to do something, you that you're here with us, Vanessa and Marcelo, would you like to? Okay, so actually this one, I guess you already mentioned something because the person said, how does the United Kingdom see the race question once you said you study ethnicity? Because this person had a contact with a researcher from France that said they banished the word race, and it meant in somehow that the issue was overcome. But here in Brazil, when you're talking about the curricula question, we are still talking about that, but if the person is white or black, that also has happened here. But so how do you think that United Kingdom see this question about race? And if you could give a mail, an institutional mail for them to get in touch with you, if it's possible.
Very good question. Conceptually, the notion, the label, what we call race and ethnicity, is very convoluted in the UK. So, for example, in the census of population, we have a question on ethnicity, but the categories is, the first one is white, and white is not an ethnicity. Everybody knows that. So it's actually a combination of race and ethnicity. And you're absolutely right, in France, they don't even talk about it. It's banned, and like they ban burqas and they ban religious symbols and clothing. And so that is the opposite of multiculturalism. And so once they banned it, they pretend that it's not there. And no wonder why racial conflicts and tension is so high in France, because they don't deal with it. In Britain, we like to believe that we are better and a multicultural society. So ethnicity, generally speaking, so it's two different kinds of people here. Government policy people and academia, the debates are slightly different. Even though the government policy people, their thinking is increasingly informed by academic research, because I work quite closely with the Home Office, with government departments, and they commission research that we produce the evidence for them to say, hey, this is a problem, fix it. And so in terms of the census, the categories, the ethnicity categories, first of all, is subjectively defined. And in Sweden and Netherlands, and it's illegal to ask people's these sensitive characteristics, because sometimes they flee their own countries because of their ethnicity or because of the religion. So they can't ask those questions in a compulsory census question. In the UK, it's different. We want to monitor racial inequality. We want to monitor what we call these protective characteristics: is race, age, sex, gender reassignment, disability, religion. Those are protected characteristics. If you don't measure it, you can't monitor it. So we ask the questions in the census. The categories are very racially oriented. We have Black Africans, we have Black Caribbean, we have white Irish travelers and Roma and Gypsy, and then we have Asian and of course we measure mixed race and mixed what we call mixed race. So it's white and Asian, white or Black British or Black Asian. So the rhetoric, the concept, and even the semiotic in the language, we're still using black and white, even though we call it ethnicity. So that's why I said that the concept is very, in terms of official classification of race and ethnicity, is still very convoluted. So we use a mixture of both, but in academic research, the debate is more advanced, obviously, and scholars, sociologists mainly, and some anthropologists, we study national identity. That's another thing. A lot of my colleagues and people living in Wales will not call themselves British because they have such a strong Welsh identity. Your director, Rene, asked me, are you proud of your national football team? The minute I walked into the room. And yes, we are, because, and we have bilingual, everything we publish has to be in Welsh and in English. In Scotland, it's the same. Scotland even want to go independent, and so they will call themselves Scottish. So it's ethnic identity and national identity of much academic debate and research. So it's very interesting because, so I am ethnically Chinese. I was born in Hong Kong, but I'm British. So I have a very strong British national identity because as, who was it? Oh, when I checked into my hotel in Sao Paulo and she put down Chinese, I said, no, I'm not Chinese, I'm British. And it says in my passport, I'm British. And I was born in the British colony, and I'm British through and through, even though I'm ethnically Chinese, and I am more British than I am Chinese, particularly now with the Chinese authoritarian treatment to Hong Kong protests and all that, and I am so not Chinese in that regard. So you're absolutely right about the ethnicity and race concept. If you want an email, I will struggle to find one for you because there's so many people looking at this research. I would suggest you to write to me and ask your question again, and also remind me what exactly that you want to find out, and I would be able to connect you with the kind of research and scholar or policy people.
Thank you very much. So those who are, you are invited to come tomorrow and invited to write to the professor so she can reply to you with those more specific information. So we have also a question from Vanessa that she is here with us, and I would say that it's the last one. Please, Vanessa, be kind to do that.
It's not actually a question, it's more about your opinion. First, sorry for my English. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm gonna ask for help if I get struggle. My search is about fake news and education, the relation. And there's a lot of things in this two universe and how they combine in some points. And even for immigrations, because fake news improve the fear. And so I'm just in the beginning. So it's a really open question. So I'm searching about politics and how the education become more technical too, and how this improve fake news as well. Because if you don't have a critical education, how you can fight against fake news? And my research is looking to hate, why the hate is improved. That's why I'm using the Matthew's book, The Signs of Hate. It's amazing. It's one of the biggest points of my search. And how in Brazil, like the extension of education get more technical, and how you see this, like this technical education can improve the fear and the fake news somehow, because we don't have the critical to understand the message or the disinformation.
It's absolutely fascinating research and very important. I am a good colleague with Matt Williams, and you should come to Cardiff and talk to him. And so we have, he has set up this hate lab. And I brought some leaflets because the reason that I'm not trying to sell anything here, but we have a really good criminology team, and we just launched a new master's of international criminology and criminal justice. Quite a big number of my colleagues study social media and they analyze Twitter feeds and social media, fake news. And Matt Williams has this thing called the Hate Lab and Social Data Science Lab, and using computational methods to understand how fake news are distributed and how to explain these things. So I think you're absolutely right. The growth of technical and vocational education, and in fact, it's actually some of these things that I mentioned tomorrow in my talk about what our university really should be for. It's the growth of these technical vocational subjects as opposed to arts and humanities and social sciences to develop critical thinking, critical independent thinking, analytical tools. I don't see them as mutually exclusive. So I teach quantitative methods. I teach students, undergraduates, postgraduates, how to analyze data. It doesn't mean that they don't need the sociology part. Most of it is spent on how to construct a research question that can be answerable using data. So if they don't have the research questions, the analysis would not stand up to any challenge. So I don't like students to do another smoking survey, another drinking survey, and what is the sociological question? And so those are the things that I think is really important to, for educators, we need to, depends what I actually don't see any of my colleagues are teaching just the technical things in the School of Social Sciences. I don't know what goes on in computational science, but university remain a university, and we still need physicists, poets, and classics, and history, and that's why universities are very short-sighted if they close those departments because they don't have enough students. So anthropology or history or modern language, and no one. So universities, I know it is to do with the neoliberal politics and populist politics, and universities are run like businesses. So we have to make a business case for everything. And if there's no business case, we can't do it. But it's really sad that if universities are no longer the place for scientific research, whether or not it's profitable, universities are the very only place on this planet where we should be able to do blue sky thinking research. We should be funded to take risks. Whether or not that experiment works, it depends on empirical research. We don't know until we do it. So you can give me 10 million pounds, I'll show you. It might not work, but it's still worth doing because that's the only way to find out. And if universities are not invested, government and public education is not invested in those things, we won't have progress in society. So university need to actually understand we need poetry, we need history, we need classics to help us understand, and social science help understand how society works. And social media is a giant sewer of of disinformation, and oh, if it's on Twitter, it must be true, or Instagram. So you're absolutely right that we need to help young people from an early stage, as early as they are given a phone. I don't know in Brazil, in the UK, I think mobile phones are banned in school, generally speaking, but most kids, once they hit high school at the age around 10, 11, they're given a phone. Once they got a phone, they start writing. They don't even write complete sentences. My students write very poorly because they write in text talk and emoji and all that. But I'm not your friend, so don't write emoji. I am your professor, and anyway, so I'm totally with you on fake news in education is a very important research topic. So I'm glad that you're doing it. Completely agree with you. Yeah.
So thank you very much. You have like a glitch of what we are going to discuss this afternoon and tomorrow. So once more, thank you very much for this opportunity for us and for those who are at home to be in talking to you. Thank you very much for those who accompanying us during this morning. As I said, tomorrow morning we are also be available. Please email us laplane@unicamp.br. To receive the link to get access to Professor Signy lecture, okay? So thank you very much. Thank you, Leandro, that was here with us during all morning, providing everything for us to be talking to everyone. So we are keep going with our agenda for the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everyone.